Hello, and welcome to Building Sustainability Podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Hart, aka Jeffrey the Natural Builder. Building Sustainability consists of conversations with designers, builders, makers, dreamers, and doers, exploring the wide world of sustainability in the built environment by talking to wonderful people who are doing excellent things. Hello, and welcome to episode 38 of Building Sustainability. This is a second conversation with Janna Laan Lomas, the founding director and designer at Grain Architecture. This is actually the beginning and the end of the other conversation in episode 37. I have stitched the two pieces together with only a slightly clunky edit. In this episode, we're talking about Janna's background, her training at CAT, and the architect's response to the climate emergency. Episode 37, the other episode, which is sort of the filling from this conversation sandwich, focuses more on design and materials and cost, kind of the nuts and bolts of sustainable design from an architect's point of view. I'd say that these episodes stand alone, so it doesn't matter if you're listening to this one first or second. So before this episode, I just wanted to celebrate a few things from the year. I think it's really important that we remember the good bits and not just how difficult 2020 has been. And these are just some of my personal successes. I've finally opened and I'm using my Triodos bank account. Triodos are an ethical bank that say they are committed to the future. So unlike many of the high street banks, they are not investing my money in the fossil fuel industry. In fact, quite the opposite. So it feels great to have finally made that switch. And next on my list is to go through any of the pensions I've created at any of my previous employments and make sure that they are also in good ethical pension funds. So what else has been good in 2020? I got rid of my car. My little car was going to cost more than it was worth to keep it on the road. So I looked at my car usage and I found that actually I only use it for occasional trips that could be made by bike. And generally the car was being used when I was feeling a bit lazy or the weather was a bit rubbish. My ride to work has been a joy this year. I've been cycling every day to work, so I thought, why not ramp it up and increase that enjoyment? So now the car's gone, it's been gone a couple of months, and I'm loving it. I've got myself a little bike trailer so that I can take my laundry to the laundrette, and now I'm cycling everywhere. And not only am I fitter, but I'm actually walking my talk about carbon emissions. And you know what? Since getting rid of the car, I've had multiple friends offer the use of their cars if I needed to move something. So turns out that they're all feeling guilty for owning a car as well. Maybe you can have a chat with your friends and see if you can get rid of a few cars. Just share one. It's creating community and reducing carbon emissions. Brilliant. What else? This year also has seen me get really further into foraging. And foraging for me has really opened up my appreciation of the natural world. It means that when I'm out walking, I am looking at a different level and it's great. It means I'm eating loads of nice stuff and I've got loads of wine bubbling away. So that's been a pleasure to increase that in my world. Finally, for my personal stuff, I just wanted to say that this podcast, I think, has been a huge success. We've ramped up listenership from around about 1,000 listens per month to now more like 4,500 a month, pushing 5,000. So thank you all for that. Other things to celebrate, I think Robert McFarlane and Jackie Morris's continued work to create interest and excitement for kids in the natural world has been something we should definitely all know about and be involved in. Their books, The Lost Words and now The Lost Spells, feature poems or spells about words that have been removed from the children's dictionaries. Words that are all related to nature and would be a travesty if they were lost from the children's vocabulary. So those books are a joy and should be in every child's life. So if you don't know about those, check them out. I'll put a link in the show notes. Also, earlier this month, it was the premiere of Bank Job, which is a film by Daniel Edelstein and Hilary Powell, which looks at debt, its causes and the effects. And it focuses on their project, which was to print local money as art and then sell it to be able to buy up local people's debt and then write that off. Write it off kind of undersells it a little bit. They blow it up. This is a thing that Rob Hopkins and I talked about in his episode on building sustainability. Again, there'll be a link in the show notes. So that is a really short roundup of some things that we should be celebrating from this pretty trying year. But I think it's good to remember that good is happening everywhere and we should be celebrating those positive things. I think it's especially important in these tough times. So maybe take a minute and write down your top achievements and the things that you think should be celebrated in 2020. Okay, on to the episode with Janna. I should say there was a slight sound issue for the first 15 minutes. It does go away. Sorry, it's annoying. One of the joys of recording episodes during a lockdown. Sound quality is difficult. When did you get into sort of sustainability? When did it become like a focus of yours?
Well, it's kind of always been. I think that's probably the answer you always get with people involved in it. But yeah, it was something I've always been interested in since I was a kid. Grew up in the New Forest, which is a lovely place to live, and the garden kind of backed onto the woods, so we just kind of, played in the woods all the time. And I was always kind of building houses in the woods. Very much in nature a lot, around with mud and sticks and things from a very early age, and wanting to design a house from a very young age. I've always been like obsessed with the idea of designing spaces and houses and things since I was about maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. By the age of 8, I knew I wanted to be an architect. And it always came with this sense of being off-grid and self-sufficient, which has been really important to me. So that was kind of the first step. But sustainability in the sort of way I kind of now understand it, meaning more to do with emissions and carbon footprint and that sort of thing, I think that I became aware of that later on whilst I was studying at university, and then went travelling for a year, and then went to CAT and in Wales, Centre for Alternative Technology, and obviously that completely opened my eyes to the reality of the crisis that we're in, which is actually something I hadn't really appreciated the severity of that until really being faced full on with the facts and forecasts of what is likely to come.
Yeah.
So that then became pretty much the centre of my life.
Uh-huh. Well, I want to come back to CAT, but I'm sort of interested to know. Well, I know that you've told me in the past that you've had a sort of ongoing iteration of your own house build, or the design for your own house.
Well, yeah, I'm 6, so yeah, it has changed over the years. But yeah, the dream is definitely to build that one day. So
how's it evolved over time?
It's got smaller, thankfully.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was quite ambitious for a while, but no, I think it has got smaller, but it's also got bigger in other ways, because I'm thinking more in a bigger picture of wanting to create something more than just a house, and I think it is so much more than that for me, which comes back to the sort of self-sufficiency idea. And that, I think this is sort of probably a topic I could run away with for the next hour, to talk about why it's so important for me to basically create what I want to do next in life, which I've always wanted to do, but it's really kind of getting to the top priority now of wanting to create kind of communities of off-grid housing, and that goes hand in hand with so many things, because I think that it's just endless, the list of benefits from living in a more nurturing community, but also in an off-grid kind of way, self-sufficient way at least.
Mm-hmm. Is this you wanting to create communities for other people, or is this you wanting to create your own?
Well, obviously I want to live that way myself, but I would ideally, I'd want to be creating this as a model that people can take on. And I know it's been done. There are lots of eco villages out there, so it's not like I'm trying to reinvent the wheel. But I think that at the moment there's a real sense. Well, I've always had this sense of insecurity of the future, and I guess that's driven my need for creating my own home, my shelter, and growing my own food to kind of feel like I can survive no matter what happens. And I think that creating that kind of bubble of security with a group of other people has become really, really important in not just my own sense of sort of well-being, but actually it feels like it's the way to it's going to be the way to survive in the future, because we need to change the agricultural system in order to actually continue to be able to produce food, because at the moment we're kind of just destroying soil and foods, and the food system is totally not sustainable. So to change that kind of goes hand in hand to me to living in a slightly different way and more in tune with the land and with where your basic needs are coming from.
Yeah, definitely. It's so there's a few things in there that resonate with me. I've heard time and time again from people that being self-sufficient, this idea of getting your own farm and going off and living and being self-sufficient is a total myth, because you can't have the bees and grow the food and have the orchard and make the baskets and like it needs to be a community of
we're social beings, aren't we? We shouldn't be isolated. Just because we want to be self-sufficient doesn't mean we want to completely isolate ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I'm really fighting with at the moment, because I've very similar sort of dream, and I sort of want to run off and get the land so I can grow the food.
Yeah.
But equally, now I'm in Bristol, which is it's a great community, and it's like, how do I can't sacrifice one for the other and then miss out on, there needs to be this middle ground of sort of support and fun and, but also, space and nature.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I'm just going to come and live on one of your,
Great. I mean, this is the thing. So many people who I talk to about it say, "Oh, that sounds great. Sign me up. I want to join in." And it's just something that makes so much sense. And yet, it's then you've got other people who just sort of kind of laugh at it, thinking it's a ridiculous idea because we can't do that. We can't go off and build communities because of the planning system at the moment. It's not allowed. Or if there is planning permission on a site, it's ridiculously expensive. And so it's inaccessible or accessible to the wrong people. And so there's this huge issue with land access and affordability and permissions, and the whole system, I think, needs to change, really. So it's not a small task to go and try and make this happen. But I think I'm sort of coming around to the idea that it's not just about building my own house. It is much more about actually having a bigger impact on the system to try and enable more people to be doing this, because people already know they want to be doing this. It's not like I need to tell people this is how you do this. So many people, particularly in the natural building world, want this sort of lifestyle anyway, and it's just that the system needs to enable it.
So do you envisage like fighting the system? Or because I think there's two options, isn't there? You either sort of fight the system and get change, or you somehow like subvert the system. Like I know so many people who are, I'm setting up my orchard so that I can eventually build a house there, because then it's, I'm working on the land. Or, they're people that are trying to find workarounds and little loopholes to get what they want.
I mean, that's the more kind of short term, and even then it's not really short term, but it is it's more a tangible kind of route that gets you there eventually, because you can find a sort of a way in. But ultimately, that's not what we need. So I would like to theoretically take on the system. But that's a huge undertaking, and I do appreciate that. So it's not going to be an easy or short journey. So it may be that in the meantime, I go and do something that is kind of finding a way to do something that might be a compromise, but it achieves my own kind of satisfaction of where I can live and work and connect and grow. But at the same time, I think my life mission is to try and take on the system, because it just genuinely feels like it's a solution to a very scary future of insecurity of the environment and climate, but also society and the conflict and illnesses, pandemics that will come with all these changes. And I think, if anything, not to mention the C word, but COVID has actually had a really positive impact on our sense of connection to our local community, because people have become much more localised, and hopefully there's going to be some positive change that comes out of this. And I think prioritising community in connection to other people in the local area is going to be a good step, I hope.
Yeah, I really hope so. Then I also thought that there's no way all the cars could go back on the road after lockdown. What a foolish thought that was.
yeah, things will go back to normal frustratingly quickly, I'm sure. People will have changed a little bit.
Yeah, well, there's a thing, isn't there, where it seems like lots of people are now fleeing cities, and they're, the sort of countryside house prices and land prices are skyrocketing because everyone's evacuating.
Yeah, so realising the value of green space and being in small communities and not in a massive city. Yeah.
Do you think something like Wales is one planet development? I know, well, I've heard that people, so I think the New Forest, the council in the New Forest had asked to find out more about the one planet development as an idea that they might take it on sort of locally. Do you think that could be an option, spreading that?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of the New Forest taking that on. I know a few counties have or are thinking of adopting one planet policies on a local level. And this is what I think is exciting, because there's an opportunity at the moment to change, with the whole planning system changes that have come into play quite recently, which I'm still kind of trying to get my head around fully. I think everybody's in that boat. But there's certainly an opportunity to influence through the local plan development. That's everybody has to rewrite the local plan to include all this zoning. And I think that could be a really exciting time. The one planet development would be fantastic to bring to the rest of the UK. A lot of people who want that kind of lifestyle, have to go to Wales in order to make it happen. And even then, it's hard. There's only I can't remember the exact number of how many one planet developments have actually happened, but I think it's under 50.
Yes, yeah. I think a couple of years ago it was 30. So it's a small amount.
And it's it would be great if that was rolled out on a bigger level. I think it is a really interesting model as well, because the idea being that you have to provide, I think it's 75% of your basic daily needs from the land that you're living on. And as an individual, that is really quite hard. And you have to achieve that within 5 years of starting it. As a group, however, I think then it becomes much more achievable. And if you I don't know that there are many sort of community examples of it. I know Lamas community it's kind of looking at it like that, but I'm not sure if I think they still do it's kind of individual one planet developments within a community rather than the whole.
I think so, yeah.
So I think it'd be quite interesting, because of course there's this issue with one planet development. I think there's an issue that people have with it, where when you get old and you retire, or you can't, if something happens, or you can't keep up that level of productivity from the land, what happens then? Do you have to leave? And it's still a little bit unknown, because I don't think many people have actually kind of gone through that yet. But it's, for me, like having, so I did a lot of caring for my grandfather when he was in his old age. He had dementia, and I was there a lot with him. I really appreciated that he was only a few minutes, 10 minutes down the road. And I certainly, value that when my parents get old, I want them to be close by, and I want to be part of the same community as them. And I think that how we should really be looking after our parents and grandparents, we shouldn't just be putting them in care homes without them being part of a community. Obviously, some people need care, and that's a big issue that I'm not going to get really into, but I just think that we need those members in our communities. We don't just need the middle section of society of people who are really productive and working off the land. You need the people who are having families, and the old people, and everybody in between, in order to create a rich, diverse society and a strong society as well. If there's one thing I learned from Kat, it was that strength is in diversity, and that applies to everything.
So, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. So, how does that diversity affect? What does it do for, say, a community?
In people, you mean in terms of?
Yeah.
Well, having obviously people from different ages is a great thing to, I think, bring different perspectives and skills and different kind of people at different stages in their lives will have something different to give, and it's not always in labour, but there's a lot of value from mixing with people from different backgrounds, different ages, different cultures and genders and everything, to be able to get a rich diversity and a better balance and I guess more resilience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about David Attenborough the other day after I watched his Netflix thing, which was slightly it was hard work. But I was wondering, thinking about how he's an old chap. He's pushing 100, I think, and like his wisdom is so well received by everyone. But I don't think that sort of idea of sort of the older generation's sort of wisdom and knowledge is afforded to everyone. I think he's sort of put on a pedestal. And
absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, I love David Attenborough, but I think that there are a lot of there's a lot of elderly people who have a lot to give still, and I think I find it fascinating that my grandfather, and I didn't know all my grandparents, but I was close to my grandfather and heard a lot of his stories, and just it was a different world when they were young. That it was only 2 generations away, and yet the world has changed so much in that time, and there are things that they did to survive back through these wars and massive changes that I think are lessons we're going to need again in the future, and possibly in our lifetime, certainly in the next couple of generations, I think. So there's a real value to just sort of listening to these stories. Just thinking about that, I haven't really considered that actually, but everyone was growing their own food in their back garden, and were really resilient, and multiple food sources. It all seems pretty relevant, doesn't it? Yeah, certainly does now.
Well, I'd like to talk about Cat because
sure,
because it's I mean, I haven't studied architecture, but it seems to me that it's quite a unique space, and sort of in its offering as a postgraduate architecture school. Is that the right description of it?
Yeah, I think so. But I would sort of perhaps take architecture out and label it the built environment, or because the course that I did there, which was the part 2 of architecture, in terms of architectural studies, you have the three different parts, and I did my part 2 there, which was a fantastic course, but it was definitely not like most architecture courses, I think, at the time at least, in that it was sort of looking at the whole built environment and the whole holistic view of how buildings and humans fit into these systems, and everything is connected in various different ways, whether it's with water or food was talked about a bit as well, but you have water, you have energy, you have waste, you have all these different systems that actually serve buildings, and buildings are obviously the focus of architecture, but if you just look at them as these kind of pretentious sculptural things, architecture with a capital A, as somebody, I think one of the tutors said there, then it's a very different thing to actually appreciating the full picture of how it's used and how it starts and finishes, as well as a sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't quite say object, but it's something that isn't permanent and that isn't standalone. It's part of a greater network.
Mm-hmm.
And at CAT, you really get that sense of connection, I guess, with everything else, and you learn so many different things. Every month we had a different sort of focus, and we would have design work and things to do, but we'd also be going to lectures about a topic and learning about, whether it was waste systems or there was one on land use, which I found quite exciting. Obviously, that's a focus of mine, but there were others on air tightness and renewable energy systems. So learning about solar, how a solar panel actually works, and all those sort of other aspects. So there was some really broad topics in there.
I mean, I imagine quite a few people listening to this might assume that, that's surely what all architects study and learn about.
I think it really depends on where you go, and I think a lot of courses are, I'm perhaps optimistically saying, I think they're changing these days, but I think in all honesty, they're all kind of lacking in prioritizing sustainability, that's for sure. Whereas CAT, I think you cannot say that about CAT. It's got that at the core of everything that it does. So it really takes it to another level. I think most courses, obviously I've done the course at CAT, I haven't done courses elsewhere, so I'm biased, but my understanding is that most courses have a module on sustainability, or it's looked at a time, but it's not fundamentally underlying everything in terms of you might be looking at studying other architecture, which obviously is valuable, but I guess it's all a priority balance, isn't it, on where we go. And I think what I loved about the CAT course was that it was very down to earth. It wasn't putting architecture up on a pedestal. It was really kind of getting down to the core function of it, I guess, and its role in society. Very basic level, and then building up from there.
And still designing beautiful things.
Absolutely.
I've seen some of your work.
Well, you've got some of my work.
I have built some of your work, yes. So, do you think there's anywhere else that I don't think there's anywhere else that compares, but if you're looking at architecture and sustainability, I think, is it Sheffield? I think is quite a sustainability focused course. But was there anywhere else you looked at?
No, there wasn't. I didn't really look around, to be honest. I was actually away travelling at the time, and I sort of I applied remotely and came back and to a letter that said 2 days later I had an interview there, and went and found out that day that I got in. So I was like, oh, okay, well then I'll just, that's that then. It was a very quick thing, really. So yeah, I didn't look around. However, I've heard things about various places, Sheffield, Bath. I think there are definitely some other good schools out there. But yeah, I feel I can't really say because I haven't got the experience.
Yeah. It seems to me that, there are other schools that have a sustainability focus, but they're sort of taking the norm and then adding that on, or, developing that. Whereas CAT, from what I've seen, seems to be like redesigning, looking at it in a completely new way.
Yeah. I think that's fair to say. It's always been ahead of the curve in that sense.
Yeah, lots of people over the years have gone to CAT. I was just going to ask you who are the some of the people that are sort of big in the natural building world that have gone there. That might be a rubbish question.
I certainly think that a lot of people who go to CAT have gone on to do really exciting things. There's certainly a lot of people who have been to CAT, whether they've studied a full course there or like a full further education course, or done a sort of short course, because they do a lot of different things at CAT, short courses and longer ones. Mine was about a year and a half. I think they've changed it slightly since I did it, but there's a huge mix of people. I mean, talk about diversity. It's got a huge range of people going there and going on to do a massive range of things. What's really nice and special about CAT, I think, is the connections that you make with the other people there. And I guess when you go, because it's sort of in the middle of nowhere in a quarry in Wales, it's quite far away, and you don't really make that effort unless you're quite an enthusiastic person, or you've got that energy and that kind of that drive to go there. So the people who there, it's quite self-selecting, and that it builds this very energetic kind of supportive community, and you end up making really great contacts. I certainly still talk to a lot of people who either I studied with or people who have been to CAT, and either taught. I mean, some of the tutors were brilliant as contacts, and that's, I think when I was there, I gathered all this information and all these sort of brilliant contacts, and I just, as soon as I left, I was like, I have to share this, I have to get this out there. Why isn't everyone else talking about it? And you're just so fired up after a year and a half of being in this sort of energetic environment that you come out and just want to give all this back out there to everybody you know. And so within a week of finishing my Part 2 course, I started a company called Building Naturally, which was with another CAT person called Sally Marika. And she and I didn't actually study together. We didn't really know each other that well at the time, but we both thought, we've both been to CAT. Let's try and do this thing. And we both had that energy of wanting to like spread the word and get everybody to be talking about things in a different way, and using all this knowledge and connections and things that we've made at CAT to really kind of get out there and make a difference. So we had this vision that we would, I would offer design work, and she would offer all these courses, and we'd give all this information out there. Turns out it's quite hard to run a business straight up. It wasn't an easy journey, but we did make loads of really good contacts. We put together a lot of information, and we built some really good foundations, I'd say. And it was probably a year or so later, we started doing some events. So what I mean by that is like shows. We went to EcoBuild and Grand Designs Live. and connected with other builders there. Other builders, we're obviously not builders, but we were sort of trying to connect and create more of a communication sort of hub, I suppose. So yeah, that was really exciting. And it kind of split in different directions. And a year later, I took the architecture side off and focused on that and set up Grain Architecture. So that was 5 years ago now, roughly, that I did that. But alongside that, I've kind of kept this kind of foot in the door with trying to build. I don't even know what it's called anymore, but NBUK is what we're doing. But what
does that stand for?
Natural Building UK. Sorry, was started. Probably 4 or 5 years ago. It kind of morphed into that, what we were doing, and that was so that was me and you for a while.
I was involved, marginally.
Alex Sparrow from UK Hempcrete, Ben Coles from Terra Perma. We had a bit of input from Roland Keeple from Earth Building UK and Ireland. And Carwyn Jones from CAT, actually, he was doing a lot of
the legend.
And everybody had a speciality, and there were lots of others as well, but we sort of had the core group of basically just coming together for these shows, and it became a yearly thing for Future Build, Eco Build, which turned Future Build. So we would go and put on, or we still have up until this year, we've gone every year and put on a bit of a show with displays and samples, some of which are sort of stuffed in the back of my shed. Back of my screen, I've got sort of a bag of foam glass aggregate and cork granules and bits of all sorts. Which anyway, so it's great because we can actually take all these materials there and show a little bit about them to the public and the industry, and try and get some information out there. And it's quite kind of basic level information, but it's just, giving people a window that they can suddenly become aware of the fact that there are alternatives out there. We don't have to do everything with cement and plastic.
Yes.
So that's become quite an important kind of mission, I suppose, of the last 5-6 years. I've been kind of fighting that corner quite hard, for trying to get people to realise they don't have to do everything with cement and plastic and steel.
How does that look in terms of climate and what we need to do to address that?
I think probably what we need to do as architects or architectural designers or homeowners or placemakers of any kind is recognise the impact not only on the individual, which I think we've talked a fair amount about, but also the wider impact on the environment in the ecological crisis and the scale that we need to respond to that on. And having, I think, a lot of these small scale projects and things that happen on an individual scale, people think they're not really having an impact because it's only their little house or their little extension. It's actually, times by a lot of people, that is a huge impact, and it does make a difference, and it is worth it. And it's worth just doing that little bit more research about what you can do in your lifestyle. People are quite happy to go and recycle things, but they'll still build a huge, relatively to their recycling, they're still going to build a huge extension out of your house out of Celotex and breeze blocks. So I think just because you can't see it as a finished product doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It does, and it's worth making the effort to try and reduce the use of I suppose bad materials and that negatively impacting materials. And there are lots of ways you can have an impact and do more, and just, I guess, raising awareness of that is the first step. So
Yeah.
I guess I want to push that.
I get that's sort of brought up a question in that sort of harking back to something you said earlier about the architects pushing the the good materials. I mean, how do you have an approach to when clients, if a client comes to you and they don't want good materials, do you send them packing, or and beyond that, like what if they start with good intentions and then money runs out, and how want to go to something?
Well, this is why I think it is really important early on to figure out what your priorities are and what your principles are. And if you have an ethic or a set of principles, I don't think it's ethical to not follow them just because you haven't got money. You just then change what you're doing to fit within those ethics. And if a client comes to me and says, "Oh, I want to do this this extension or something," but I'm not, we might consider putting a solar panel on it, but I'm not really that eco. I want to kind of go just normal, whatever that means. I would typically try to argue, obviously, try to talk to them about using better materials and the fact that we need to be making those better decisions. But ultimately, if they won't change the way that they want to build, then I won't work on that project. That's not something I feel ethically I can do. I don't agree with it. No, there's not a bone in my body that can feel happy with being responsible for telling a builder to pour concrete and build with plastic. And it just is completely wrong to me when there are so many other better things. It just doesn't make sense. So I will, and I have walked away from projects if they don't make ethical kind of sense to me. And I actually write that into my contracts. So when I have a contract with a client, it will say, if you don't continue to try to follow the principles that we've set out in this document, then we have the right to walk away, because that is something that I would do if it becomes apparent that the client doesn't care at all. Then we would definitely consider walking away. And I think if everybody did that, people wouldn't be able to build with bad materials. And it's the very fact that architects are afraid. And I know this, I went to the actually Architects Declare event, which was probably this time last year, roughly, which was fantastic. But there was this question.
What is that about?
Sorry, Architects Declare is a kind of acknowledgement that we declare as a climate emergency. And it's become a bit of a movement, much like I think there are quite a few groups of people with I don't know if I think there's a contractors declare or an engineers declare or various different groups in lots of industries. But the Architects Declare group obviously are trying to raise awareness and promote better building, although it's debatable given who has actually signed up to it, whether the practices are really as green as all that. But anyway, they did have a fantastic event, and they had lots of different practices, people from practices there, and they asked the hall, if you're presented with a client who doesn't want to use sustainable materials or build in a sustainable way, do you take the work on or do you walk away? And we kind of had to move that way for yes, that side of the hall, and that way for no. We would walk away or we would not walk away. And I think there were about maybe 6 people out of a couple of hundred who were there who said no, we wouldn't accept that work, we would walk away from it. And everybody else said we would continue to work with them. And one of the other people of those 6 was asked, why have you said you would walk away? And he said, everybody over there is business as usual, they are the people who are the problem, because they're carrying on as if we're not in an emergency. And actually, we have to react altogether as an industry and say, no, we can't do this anymore. This isn't sustainable. We have to walk away from those projects until the clients get the message and say, okay, fine, we'll do it the right way.
How do you think, like the architecture as a sort of, as an industry, do you think there is a change happening? Like that could be, there might be 8 next year and 15 after that.
That guy said that there were several more people that walked over to our side of the room, which was really nice, actually. I think, when you put it in a different way and you see other people doing it as well, you feel like, okay, maybe I can actually join them and move. And there are lots of these movements happening. Yeah, there are lots of groups of people. Actually, one of the things I wanted to mention was ACAN, which is Architects Climate Action Network. And that's another group that have been doing fantastically. My husband, who's also an architect, has been doing a lot of work with ACAN over the last year. And it's great because you can really see the difference in the numbers of people who are engaging with it and who are not accepting business as usual. But unfortunately, a lot of those people are not like the directors of big companies that are making these big decisions. And I think a lot of the big companies out there, the big architecture practices who do huge buildings, whether they're numbers of buildings or whether they're sort of the profile of architecture and kind of leading in some way, they're still not the ones making those declarations and good decisions, really, to walk away from business as usual. So there's still a long way to go in the fight, but there are a lot of these groups out there of people forming to try and raise awareness and change policies and fight against legislation to improve what we have to do, which I think is a necessary thing, particularly when you're talking about scale of large buildings or large projects. You need the regulations to be there in order to actually enforce better building to happen.
I was talking to someone yesterday who was a solicitor or a lawyer. I'm not really sure of the difference between those two professions. Excuse my ignorance. But she was saying she's working on a project which is trying to, or it's putting clauses into contracts which force circular economy in building projects. And so, if there's all these, if everyone's sort of attacking it from different sides, then maybe there's, progress can happen. I think she was saying that the reason they were doing that was because legislation is slow. Government top-down legislation is so slow to be implemented and sort of come in. So they didn't feel like there was the time. I completely agree. There isn't time. We've got to make such a difference, and I mean, we get onto perhaps a bigger topic of what we have to do as a whole industry and society in order to adapt and try to counter climate change. I don't think we are going to stop it anymore. I don't have the blind optimism of thinking that we can turn this all around, but I do think that we can make a huge difference still, and we still have to, if we want as a species to survive, we have to make as much of a difference as we possibly can, but we also have to have a certain level of acceptance and adaptability to a very new set of normals that we're going to be presented with. And this is why I think we really need to think differently about building for more localized strength and resilience, and responding as much as we can, as quickly as we can, in preparation, as well as trying as much as possible to regenerate the areas that we've been destroying, and capture as much CO2 as we can. Stop emitting, obviously, as much CO2 as we can to start with.
So all these things have to be attacked at all different levels. And you need a lot of grassroots, but you also need a lot of top down, and you need everything from the sides as well. We need to attack this in every way. There are certainly a lot of people fighting on different levels, and that's what it takes, I suppose. But
yeah, I'm interested by your talking about that not saving the world, attitude, because people always say to me, like, oh, you do natural building, is that earthships? And I've always sort of held natural building as trying to save the world, and earthships as trying to like hunker down and survive the changed world. Interesting to hear yours.
It's both, I think, really. I think it's, yes, obviously we need to be changing the world, changing our impact on the world as well, as much as possible. We need to be reducing our energy demand as one of the main things in pollution, is the, top priorities, that we need to be changing our buildings and the built environment, the way we use the built environment, and we need to change agriculture and the whole agricultural system. I think those are massive, obviously there are a lot of massive issues, but those are some really top issues, certainly for me. We've 100% got to fight and change the world. I sort of tell myself every day to go and change the world and to keep up the fight. But at the same time, I think you have to, as a designer, you have to be looking to what is likely to come, and that's more flooding, more storms, more heat waves, more of everything that is going to make our lives harder, both in terms of our shelters, our homes, but also our agriculture, our transport. Everything will become harder. So that's why I think in many ways relocalization is really important, because it gives the security to more individuals and communities, that they can actually be more connected with the things they need to survive and be ready to kind of adapt or respond to various emergencies which are likely to come up. I think it's ignorant to design purely optimistically and say that we can carry on designing the same types of buildings as we have done, and just not emit the carbon. It's not just about carbon. We need to be improving the biodiversity, because we need, not just because animals are nice, but because we need biodiversity. It is our habitat, and if we want to have an ecosystem that survives, we need to nurture it, and that means a whole load of things. It means that we need to change the way that we're building and living, really.
Yeah.
Adaptation.
Big changes then.
Yeah. Big changes are very much needed.
Well, I'm very much excited to live in your design for the future. I'm fully on board.
Well, yeah, I think it will happen if it takes my whole life to make it so. I think I'll make it happen.
Excellent. Well, yeah, well done, and well done for being one of the 6 people on the right side of the room.
There are others moving over, I'm sure, all the time.
Yeah, we'll count this as sort of luring people across.
Yeah, I think we need to stand together, because that's the thing. If you're the only person on that side of the room, it's a really hard thing to do, because on a day-to-day basis, you say, well, I can't say no to that work because I need the money, I need the work. And that's a very real situation, obviously, that a lot of people are in. But at the same time, if everybody stands on that side of the room, the industry changes. And it becomes a really powerful thing. And it just takes everybody working together.
Here's probably a big question. I'm conscious that we've talked for ages, but I'm having a really great time. So I just want to keep going. And this is a question I've asked a few people recently, is, do you think capitalism and sustainability can happen at the same time? And, like the big architecture, the big partners in the architecture firms who are, I would assume are making tons and tons of money, and that why would they change their practices? How do you get those to change when money's such a big influencer?
Yeah. Okay. So this opens a whole other kind of worm. I have a real kind of hatred for the fact that with all the progress that we as a society claim to have made, we are still working really hard in order to achieve money, and everything is sort of a success is always, it's money driven. And obviously I have to mention the donut economics model by Kate Raworth, and I saw her speak actually at the Architects Declare event that I was mentioning earlier. She spoke at that, and it was absolutely fantastic. She's such a good speaker. And donut economics, for anybody who doesn't know, is basically saying, well, instead of the economic model that we all follow of growth is better kind of thing, it's saying that, well, actually we should be looking at it in terms of we should be striving to achieve our needs within our limitations. And the outer ring of this donut is our limitations, and the inner ring is our needs. And the reason it's a ring and not a line is because there are obviously different segments that this applies to, and she breaks it up into lots of different areas, and there's a lot in there to do with equality and quality of life, and not being in poverty effectively. And there's a lot of the world which is still not meeting its needs, and there are some real issues out there. But then there are huge parts of the world, obviously, that are going way beyond the limitations of what we have within our planet. We have restrictions, and we should be striving. We should be saying progress is reaching that balance. It's not just about making more money. It's about living better lives, and that means everybody, and means perhaps a different way of thinking of what success is and progress is. I think the future will force us into that, probably, in my slightly pessimistic view of where the world's going. But we actually have a choice that we can aim for it in a more positive way and design for it as designers. We can certainly try to drive the world in that direction and paint best pictures. I mean, in terms of running a practice, running a business, I think it's really important, and something, a whole other topic to talk about is the sort of well-being of running a business and trying to achieve all these things whilst actually having a good work-life balance, which is actually very important. Obviously, it's very important, but it's easily forgotten sometimes, especially when you are focused on something bigger or something that seems really important. So I think it's just measuring success not just by like the finance of a company or the finance of your situation, but in the life that you're able to live.
Thank you, Janna. I think we could have chatted for probably another hour quite easily. Yeah, very much an enjoyable time. So that's it from me. As always, remember to subscribe. If you get a chance, review and share these episodes. And if you've got some spare cash, then support on the Patreon page. That is patreon.com/building sustainability. All the best.